Namaskar, hello and a very warm welcome viewers. You're watching this special presentation of Sansad TV, Samvad. I'm your host Kriti Mishra and joining us today on the program is a very special guest, Union Housing and Urban Affairs and Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri. Sir, welcome to Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us. Let's begin talking about Gati Shakti. You've written an elaborate and didactic piece on it, scripting India's infra growth from Chandragupta Maurya to Ashoka to Modi 2.0. How will Gati Shakti transform our nation? What would it mean for our infrastructural landscape?
Kriti ji, the transformation was already going on. Every government that assumes office does some changes, introduces reforms. But I think the 7 years of the Modi government, 2014 to 19 and 19 onwards till date, have seen an acceleration of the development programs. And I will give you some statistics in respect of one ministry with which I have the privilege of being associated, Housing and Urban Affairs. In 2014, a newly elected Prime Minister introduced what I regard, what I have always said, but others now agree, one of the most comprehensive and ambitious programs of urban rejuvenation ever attempted anywhere in the world. Let me share some figures with you. In the previous 10 years dispensation led by the Congress government, the entire investment and expenditure on urban schemes was 1,57,000 crores. In the 7 years of the Modi government, one should actually say 6 years, because most of these programs started in June of 2015, the expenditure has accelerated and multiplied 7 times. It is 11,80,000 crores now, and it is ongoing. Recently, 2 more schemes have been introduced, whose combined expenditure in 5 years will be over 4,50,000 crores. Gati Shakti proceeds one step further. Look, there was work going on independently on highways. The highway construction rate went up, if I remember correctly, from 10 to 12 kilometers a day sometimes to 33 kilometers a day. Gas pipelines were laid earlier. We had, I think, 14,000 kilometers of gas pipeline in 2014. We have our 19,000 kilometers now. We are taking this up to 35,000 kilometers. Look, that was work which will go on. Some governments do it faster. The Modi government has accelerated way beyond any other government earlier. But I think Gati Shakti is something more than that. Gati Shakti represents an integrated, holistic approach. Now, for instance, if a particular ministry, let us say for purposes of reference X, wants to undertake a development project, let us say building a highway, let us say in a remote part of the country, right, J&K or the Northeast, it would let its intent be known in the master plan of Gati Shakti. It would make it known on the portal. So any other ministry, including the ministries I am associated with, if at that stage we already have something on the drawing board, we would coordinate, consult, dovetail our plans so that this absurd situation of somebody building a road now, having to dig it up later because a gas pipeline has to come in, or the gas pipeline is laid, and suddenly you find that that is an area where some other infrastructure project is crisscrossing. It will ensure not only a coordinated, integrated, holistic approach on major infrastructure projects, it will bring down the logistics and other costs. I can also share with you that when I was Minister of State in the Commerce Ministry, we had a logistics division. We were able to look at logistics. Now, I use the word and the term logistics in a broader sense. It's not just about road transportation, which is more or less costly, mostly more costly, but it is a question of integrating all other forms of transportation, ensuring that you have multimodal access, ensuring that you have multimodal ease, so that you are building railways in one place, metro in another, a lighter form of metro, you're building skyways, you're building infrastructure for a future India. And I think it will also mean, as I already see it being demonstrated, a mindset change. Every ministry in the government, whether you like it or not, look, I'm familiar with this. When I was an ambassador for 14 years, I used to think that all I have to do is to run my own mission. But whatever mission I was in charge of, an embassy or a high commission, it also had a mandate, but the mission in the next country also had a mandate. So the question of integration, the question of being able to ensure that all ministers are part of that narrative, both in terms of contributing to its evolution and once the decisions are taken in terms of a Gati Shakti master plan, also responsible for its execution.
Absolutely, sir, but that would require seamless coordination, as you said. Now, if we talk about India's infrastructure, it was crippled by delays in implementation, bureaucratic hassles, red tapeism. How do you think Gati Shakti will plug or bridge these gaps between macro planning and micro execution?
Well, I think you've hit the nail right on the head. Most of the time, if you look at an era gone by, not many people remember it, but 10, 15 years ago, what you had used to have are signs, work in progress. You used to have signs saying work ongoing, okay? And you had a large number of physical sites in the country. You could actually dot them on a map where foundation stones were laid, where some Bhumi Pujan had been done, but the project never took off. Now you've got a situation where major projects are being built in defined time spaces. I'll give you my favorite example, something that's already been done. You know, we had Second World War hutments. These were dilapidated structures which were built prior to the Second World War. They were temporary structures meant to house personnel from the Defense Ministry and other allied departments in two places in Delhi, okay? They were taking up something like 60 or 70 acres of space. We have got modern state-of-the-art buildings using the greenest of sustainable technologies, using technology, facial recognition, etc. for defense personnel. They've quietly come up. The Prime Minister did a inauguration of those buildings. Nobody even remembers when we had started the work. It was supposed to be completed in 22 months. Madam, I can tell you it was done in nearly 12 to 13 months, 12 months plus. We are building the Central Vista Avenue, which we will hope to get ready by 26 January of 2022 when we are celebrating our 75th anniversary. Same with Parliament. So there is a new sense of commitment, new focus, and a absolute adherence to timelines, which also means that you're able to do things within the budgeted expenditures. That is the difference. My own view is that partly because of the introduction of technology, partly because we have punitive clauses for delay, partly due to the fact that you've got political direction, and that's not partly, that's the main cause. And the rest of us feel accountable. I mean, today, you'll probably get no credit if a project is completed on time, whether it's under a multi-ministry project or your own, but you will definitely have the spotlight on your focused on you if it gets delayed, and you better have very good reason. So in spite of the fact that we've had these aberrations, these delays on account of COVID, I think the general atmosphere today is that civil works and all these projects and all this development work, which is part of the new India, both infrastructure in terms of other allied activities which need to be taken up, is being done within stipulated timelines. And I think Gati Shakti will have the effect ultimately of tearing down the silos. The silos are not always physical, confined in ministry building. If I may be allowed to say that, some of these silos are in our minds.
Sir, you also talked about COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the debilitating impact of this pandemic, we are firm on our target of $5 trillion economy. We've also gone on record saying this. But do you think lack of investment demand or private demand, that could be a cause of worry? Because in achieving that target, Gati Shakti is considered to be a giant stride.
First of all, we were being subjected to all kinds of canards. One is that the economy had slowed down, that the economy had collapsed, that our handling of COVID was X, Y, Z. Two pieces of good news I want to give you is that when we crossed the 100 crore or 1 billion mark on vaccine doses being administered, there was quiet but clearly discernible, silent but clearly audible admiration not only within the country but outside. This is the first point I want to make. Second thing is when the Prime Minister spoke about Atmanirbharta, because, you know, at that point of time, you were not sure about the supply lines, whether you would have vulnerability on account of some location. Today, your external sector is booming. Your exports are witnessing buoyant expansion. Sectors of the economy which we never spoke about in traditional terms, healthcare, you know, digital economy, etc. Everything is booming, but so is consumer demand. I mean, if you look at the petrol consumption, and I'm only citing this because I happen to be petroleum and natural gas minister. You know, today the petrol offtake at the bunk cumulatively is, I think, about 18-20% higher than pre-COVID. The diesel offtake is good 10-12% higher than pre-COVID, and this figure is going up constantly. So when you have energy consumption increasing, you clearly have a situation where economic activity is on the rebound. Housing and urban affairs, in my ministry, I see real estate bouncing back. I see very impressive figures in many areas. When real estate bounces back, the offtake of cement, the offtake of steel, employment, man hours, etc. I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to preempt what is happening, but I see the festive sales, etc. are doing very well. I look at the sale of automobiles, for instance, which are the highest selling vehicles. They are not the Creta, which is an 18 lakh rupee vehicle, is number one, I find. I'm just off the cuff, I'm telling you. If I look at the increase in air traffic, we are almost back to pre-COVID levels. Pre-COVID level, I used to always say 4 lakh was the highest per day, but we were doing 350,000 a few days ago. We've opened up from 85 to 100%. I could give you n number of examples. So, if economic growth is visible and we are bouncing back and we are talking about double-digit growth, look, those who have, somebody tweeted, you know, one sarcastic, why put a figure of 10 trillion by 2030? Why not put 100 trillion? I'd like to tell these ignoramuses, if I may use that word, in the normal course, if the economy is firing on all 4 cylinders, better if it's firing on 6, your GDP doubles every 5 years. Even if you're not getting everything right. So if we were $2.89 trillion in 2019-20, by 25, going up from $3 trillion to $5 trillion isn't that much of a this thing. And if you're in $5 trillion economy in 2025 up to $10 trillion, it's not fanciful. Yes, some of our consumption is less than global consumption, but that's all the more reason. More and more people are coming into the formal economy. When we have a scheme for street vendors, you know, you and I were talking about this sometime. We were linking street vendors with what is called Zomato. And what happens? You give street vendors a 10,000 rupees loan. You bring them on board to get their data. You make them eligible for other government schemes. That is the transformation taking place. And the base is, you know, I've always said, politically the mass is wise and constant. And the people, at the end of the day, the consumer, at the end of the day, the consumer determines. So if you want to say the consumer is king, that is being demonstrated.
All right, before we talk about fuel prices, as you mentioned, you've also written that Gati Shakti would be a point of inflection in our history. The sheer scale of investment and development, we cannot actually estimate right now. The impact of Gati Shakti on the ease of living for the people of India.
Kriti ji, let me put it this way. When you move from Swachh Bharat mission, from Swachhta, Abhiyan 1, when you're producing open defecation free cities, to a higher form of the Swachhta mission, when you're moving to garbage free cities, okay? When you're moving from 0 to 760 kilometers of urban transport in the form of metro, and you're going to add another 1,039 kilometers in terms of metro, metro neo, metro light. Everywhere I go to, they either want a sophisticated metro or a metro neo or metro light. How does ease of living come? Ease of living comes when people have a roof over their head. And that structure is built through sustainable and green technology. Okay? When our sisters and our mothers and our daughters don't have to use traditional fuels, which are wet wood and coal, and they choke in the process. But when they have neat gas cylinders, when you look at the figure that you've gone up from 14 crore gas connections in 2014 to 29 crores or 30 crores now, when that's a process underway, when you're building 33 kilometers of highway per day, that plus the ease of doing business in the interface with the government. Everything is on technology. Earlier, people used to say the transition to technology is not going to be easy. Well, it has already taken place. Now, the not using technology, not using digital platforms, that is the not using that becomes the aberration, not the use of it. So, and I see a complete transformation taking place. To that extent, I think India provides a template for the rest of the developing world. But I want to conclude with another comment. You place yourself somewhere in the United States, New York, and you look at the globe, Latin America, Africa, Asia, the Pacific. How many countries in the world today present that win-win where you have a large consumer base, 1.34 billion, 1.35 billion people, an economy which is growing at double digit. No, nobody, even in your worst scenarios, is anybody saying that you're going to grow at less than 10%. And more than that, you have the rule of law, you have the growth of technology, you have startups, and you have an atmosphere of excitement taking place across the spectrum, no matter which sector you are dealing with, whether it is IT, whether it is energy, etc. I think that is the strength of India. And Gati Shakti not only carries the previous processes to their logical maturity and conclusion, it opens up the entire world through this platform and through this master plan.
Absolutely, sir. Now let's shift focus from Gati Shakti to fuel prices, as you were talking about. You also said that these domestic prices are linked with international prices. The taxes that are being collected are used by the government for giving free vaccines, for other developmental schemes. But sir, when do you expect these prices to stabilize so that there's some kind of respite for the consumers?
First of all, I'm not going to repeat what I said to you or what I said elsewhere, and you are very kindly summarizing. But let me tell you, I am not the only oil minister or energy minister who is trying to reach out to those in OPEC, OPEC Plus, who make that determination. I have seen in the last few days reports ranging from the extreme Far East, from countries like Japan, to people in the World Bank, to my counterparts elsewhere, all trying to use their margin of persuasion with great subtlety with the producing countries to say, look, an orderly transition to green energy through pricing which is affordable. Because if you take the pricing sky high, some people will just not be able to afford that issue. And there are issues of supply availability. There are countries in South Asia, I don't want to name them, they have an actual access problem. And they're reaching out for loans. They've been bailed out by countries in the Gulf and even by India. I'm making the limited point that when you have a deregulated system and world market prices are controlled, in this case by OPEC Plus, you can only use your margin of persuasion. But we can do other things, which are things we are doing. I, for instance, have been reaching out to in my limited way. First of all, I don't collect taxes. I mean, the very often, why don't you reduce? I don't collect taxes. I'm the petroleum and natural gas minister. The privilege of collecting taxes, excise, etc. belongs to my senior colleague, the finance minister. But what I can do is I can appeal. I can appeal to the states. I can say, I'll give you an example. For instance, we've been telling them, all right, whatever we can do in the center, we have not in the last 1 year, during this phase, petrol prices have gone from $19 a barrel, $19.56 a barrel in March 2020 to $85 a barrel recently. But we have not increased that 32 rupees a litre, which we charge by way of excise, and which you said for which we do X, Y, Z, do 30 other things. But some of the state governments, which 34 out of the 36 state governments and UTs have increased their levies and taxes. Manipur, hiking it by 11.40 per litre on petrol, rupees 6.31 per litre on diesel. Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Punjab. I could go on naming. So what can I do? As a central minister, I try to call my colleagues through you, through the press. When they come to see me individually, I appeal to the finance ministry to appeal to them. So it's a collective effort. All I can say is I am an eternal optimist. I always continue to be positive, and I always say when there is a challenge, there is always a, some silver lining moving forward. So I hope OPEC Plus will see reason. I hope some of our other actions will bear fruit, and we will see. We will have reason to, reflect on our discussion today.
Let's be very sanguine about that, sir. But before we conclude this conversation, as the parliamentary channel, it mandates and warrants us to ask this, that 2022 is the deadline for the new parliament building. Recently, Prime Minister also inspected the ongoing work. How are you monitoring the progress constantly?
Can I tell you just one thing? If anything, this project will not suffer from under-monitoring. It might actually become an area where there is over-monitoring. Everybody is monitoring it because, this is a prestige project. The CPWD, the contractor, Tatas, my colleagues in the ministry, me, and one day the Prime Minister, as you said, decided to pay a surprise visit. I'm sure to personally check whether all that he's being told is happening on the ground. And he'd come back after a grueling 16-hour journey. He spent, I think, immediately on arrival, 2.5 hours with the Defense Minister and the Home Minister. And the next thing we knew was that he was alone, without any security. He had arrived at the Parliament construction site. And he spent an hour and a half there. I can't go into more detail. But let me tell you, I am an old world monitor, old world. I happen to be Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs. I go by what is said to me. I have my own informal channels of this thing. The secretary in my ministry monitors this every week. So we are all at it. And all I can tell you is we are not only reasonable, confident about getting it done by the time the winter session of Parliament is to be convened, but I think we will get it done.
All right, you will get it done. On that note, Mr. Puri, thank you so much for talking to us, and thank you so much for this candid conversation.
Thank you.